This morning I'm going to tell the story how Buddhism has been started. Buddhism is a very large religion, major religions of the world, which has been distributed all over the world. For that reason, it is good to learn this Buddhism, how it has been started. Many teachings of Buddha are being highlighted in the mass media. In the YouTube, if you just type Buddha's thought or Buddha's teaching, many wisdom of Buddha will pop up, will come up, that influence many people of the world. So for that reason, it is good to know what is Buddhism, how does it come into being, and what are its major teachings. And in the concluding part, we'll be comparing this Buddhism with Christianity. Which one is more trustworthy? That will be the aim of these lessons. It is started in the land of India, on the plains of the Ganges, at the foot of the Himalayan mountain, at about 600 BC, a clan of Hindus called the Sakyas, and their ruler, King Sudara Gautama. Dhana. King Sudodhana is the father of Gautama. And their kingdom is called the Sakya's kingdom. Okay, Sakya's kingdom. King Sudara lived in the royal palace in Kapila Vista. That is the name of the town. He was wealthy and healthy, and all these people love him. And yet, he did not have a child, and he was unhappy. So each day, the king made sacrifice of the many gods of Hindus, and he gave much in charity, and for many hours studied the sacred scripture. And each day he prayed for a son. When the king was already 50 years old, Queen Maya, the name of his wife, Queen Maya, M-A-Y-A, gave birth to a son, and he was named Siddhartha. Okay, you have already written down Siddhartha. He will be the next prince, he will be next king of the Sakya's kingdom. When the news of the prince's birth became known over the kingdom, people from all over the land came to congratulate their king and queen. And among the many visitors came 7 holy men from the Himalayan mountain. When Prince Siddhartha was shown to them, all the 7 holy men exclaimed at the same time, "Such a beautiful child was never born before." And they looked at the prince and exclaimed together, "He'll grow up to be a very great man." And what they foretold about this one is that, if he chooses a worthy life, the 7 holy men replied, he'll become king of the world. So the great future for his baby is foretold by the holy men, 7 holy men, making Sudodhana very happy. And for that, he ordered more sacrifice to be offered to the gods, more alms, more health to be given to the poor, and the celebration of the palace to be continued for another 7 days. So that is how Siddhartha Gautama was born. And an incident took place during his childhood. I want to skip those stories. We'll start from age 12. When King Sudara reached his 12th birthday, what happened? a great celebration was arranged in the royal palace, and many guests were invited on his 12th birthday. For at the age of 12, as the son of the good Hindu, the prince had to put on the sacred thread, which is some sort of confirmation into their religion. So at the time, at the age of 12, he need to take the vows to become the earnest student of the holy books of his father religion. That will be Hindu religion. So when a boy puts on that sacred thread, he needs to take the vows of allegiance to his religion. And at that time, he is called twice born Hindu. So as soon as Siddhartha Gautama became a twice born Hindu, it was his duty to study the scripture. He was sent to the best known and most learned priests in the Sakya kingdom to receive from them his education. In those days, children of the high caste studied literature, grammar, mathematics, astronomy, and other subjects as well. But most of the time, they were devoted to the study of their religion. So the book they studied from their religious book would be the Vedas, the scripture of the Hindu. These Vedas was a very long books, written mostly in poetry. And besides the Vedas, they had to study all other books of the Hindus as well. So as soon as Prince Siddhartha learned to read and understand Sanskrit, his teachers, the priests, began to teach the holy books and explain their religion, which is called Hinduism. So from that you will have already an idea. This Buddhism had started from Hinduism. So for 4 years, after he became 12, for 4 years, Prince Siddhartha remained with his teacher for 4 years, studying. And when he returned home to the royal palace at the age of 16, he was as learned in the Hindu religion as many of his counterparts. So on the day Siddhartha was born, a story was like this once more. On that very day, another book tells us that his future wife, the princess Yasodhara, Yasodhana, his wife Yasodhana was also born. Siddhartha, when he was 16, his future wife was also 16 years. She was so beautiful, and they were married. And King Suddhodana was very happy and gave his sons and daughter-in-law 3 beautiful castles and many servants and all that they wished for. And for over 10 years, they lived happily together. And the prince, this Siddhartha Gautama, the prince, was very fond of hunting, and he often went out on hunting expedition with his bodyguard Chana. So, how did Siddhartha change his mind? It will be like this. One day, as the prince came home from a hunting trip, the first sight he saw was a man, all skin and bones, very thin, all skin and bones, writhing in pain upon the ground. So he asked his bodyguard, he asked Chana, "What is wrong with this man?" The prince asked Chana, and he replied, "The man is ill and in great pain, my prince." And he asked, "But why is he ill?" Bodyguard Chana answered, "That, my prince, is the way of life, all people are liable to become ill. The prince asked no more questions, but he was very sad. That is his first sight, which ends his life. Okay. Number 2, the next day, when the prince and Chana went out again, they met an old man, a very old man, so old that his back was as carved as a titan bow. Okay, very carved already. His head nodded all the time. His hand trembled like a palm leaf in the breeze. And even with the aid of 2 canes, he could hardly walk. A very old man. And the question came again, what is wrong with this man? Prince Siddhartha asked. Is he too afflicted with pain and illness? Chana answered, that is the way of all us. All human beings will be lighted in the old age. That is his answer. Again, the prince returned home feeling very sad. And the third sight, on the next day, the next time when they went for hunting trip again, when Prince Siddhartha and Chana went out again, they met a funeral processions. The corpse of the man was carried, the dead body was carried to be cremated, and the widow and the children of the dead man followed behind, weeping bitterly. And the prince asked Chana for an explanation. This, my prince, is the way of every man. No matter whether a king, one is king or a pauper, death comes to all this. So Chana taught him lessons again. So when the prince returned home that day, his wife had arranged a great feast in the entertainment hall, where many trained girls were to dance and sing and play musical instruments. But the prince felt too sad to join the feast. He went away to his room thinking over what he had seen. So those 3 sights, a very sick man, a very old man, and the funeral procession which he had seen, was already in his mind. That makes him very unhappy. That makes him think. That makes him ponder. What happened to man? What happened to these people? So for nearly 30 years, he in palaces, he had studied many learned books, but he really knew little of the life and people. He had spent many years being amused, but he had not seen such sickness, an old age, and a death. And the longer he thought of those things, the more unhappy he became. So he said, something must be wrong with life. He thought to have illness and old age and death in it. So what's wrong with life? He wondered where suffering came from. In the many holy books of the Hindus, he had studied, he had not come across the explanation of how suffering was created. He wondered why all the people in the kingdom could not be as happy as he and his family. And when he thought of all the people in the land, he began to realize how hard and wretched the life of the very poor people must be. So most of the very poor people belonged to the very low caste. The poorest were considered so low that they were not even permitted to go into the temple to read the Vedas or to come near anyone who belonged to the higher caste. So Prince Siddhartha began to realize that the first time, that how full of suffering the life of these people must be. So he wondered why. Why did God, why did Brahma, the creator, divided people into so many castes? They did not seem right to him. So somehow, everything he learned from the holy books and the religious books seemed wrong to him. And he said there, in his chamber, thinking, he had the sound of music and singing coming from the entertainment hall. That made the prince more unhappy. For he realized that all pleasures last only for a moment, and all his life ends in death. All life ends in death. The more he thought about it, and about the suffering that exists in the world, the unhappier he became. So what happened? The next day, this will be the foresight. The next day he went out again with Channa. This time he did not go to the woods to hunt, but into the marketplace where the people gather during the day. So there among the merchants, what did he saw? The prince saw an old monk, dressed in coarse yellow robes, begging for food. At this time, though the monk looked old and was dressed so poorly and had to beg for his food, what happened? His face seemed very calm and happy. This monk was one of the thousands of people in India who left their families and their home and went out into the mountain to live by themselves, where they could think undisturbed. They only came from time to time to the cities to beg for food. Those are the monks, the life of the monks. So a thought came to his mind. If the monk could live like one of, if I could live like one of these monks and spend all my time thinking, maybe I could learn the truth about where suffering comes from. And I could think out how could people ought to live in order to lead a good life. Until I discover that truth, I will be unhappy. He made up his decision on that day. Then and there the prince decided to leave the palace and his family and his wealth, go into the woods and live like one of the poor monks. He took that decision already. We have often heard about beggars wanting to become a prince. But here, he is a prince in India who decided to become a beggar monk in order that he might search for the wisdom of the world. So King Siddhartha, so to say, Prince Siddhartha, announced that he was going to leave his home and become a beggar monk. It was a great shock to his father, who had a great vision for his son. King Suddhodana had hoped that his son would become the next king of the Sakya's kingdom. He tried to persuade the prince not to leave the palace, but Siddhartha made up his mind already. So thus at that time, Princess Yasodhana gave birth to a son. Okay? Gave birth to a son. Now they thought that the prince will not leave the palace for the love of his son. But still then, King Suddhodana was mistaken. When the child was born, Siddhartha knew that unless he ran away from home before his love for his little son became too great, he would never discover the wisdom of life. So one night he called his servant, Channa, and told him to get his favorite horse ready for a long journey. At the time, Channa was surprised, but he needed to obey his prince. So what happened? His master should want to start out a journey after midnight. And he wanted Channa to get ready to go with him. So what happened on that night, on that very night, Channa left to carry out his order. Prince Siddhartha entered his rooms, his bedrooms. And there he saw her asleep, his wife asleep with her hand resting on the head of the sleeping child beside her. Prince Siddhartha looked lovingly at them, but he did not wake them up. He was afraid his heart would weaken, and his wife pleased to remain at home. So on that very night, he left the palace with Channa, and together they traveled to the direction of the Magadha kingdom. So when they were at some distance from Kapila Vista, their capital, they stopped and alighted, get down from his horse, with Chana's house, Siddhartha shaved his hair and beard. On seeing his master shaven like a beggar monk, Chana began to weep. And he said, Chana, you return to the palace, I'll go straight to my journey, begging my food and trying to learn the truth of life. So his servant left for the palace, and he left for the woods to become a beggar monk. So on the way, he first met a beggar. And he said, let us change our clothes. The prince gave the beggar his beautiful robes and one of his beggar clothes for exchange. Then he wore the clothes of the beggar. Then Prince Siddhartha walked on a beggar, like a beggar in search of the wisdom of the world. That explained all of his life to him. So let us remember one thing. The night when Prince Siddhartha Gautama left his home to become a beggar monk, in the 29th year of his life, is known as the Blessed Night of the Great Renunciation. Blessed Night of the Great Renunciation. Just note down that one. The night when Prince Siddhartha Gautama left his home to become a beggar monk, in the 29th year of his life, it is called Blessed Night of the Great Renunciation. So for 7 years, Siddhartha wandered from place to place in search of wisdom. His voice was gentle, his conversation simple and wise, and all the people he had met became his friend. Once he sat under the grove of trees talking to some wandering monks. King of Magadha, Bhimsara, came and listened to him. When Siddhartha ended, King Bhimsara said to him, your words are wise, come to my palace and become my chief advisor. At the time he answered, if it were honor and riches that I sought, I would be king in the kingdom of Ganges. Siddhartha replied, but my search for things that neither wealth nor honor can buy, but I am in search of the true knowledge of life. He replied. Then King Bimbisara said, promise me that when you find that wisdom, you would come and teach it to me. I promise, said Siddhartha. So he left that place. And he met across many monks, and he explained the way how he searched for wisdom. And once he met 5 monks on the way. He and the 5 monks went into the forest together, and there they remained for some days. They starved themselves. They starved themselves until their bodies became like skeleton, became very thin, and their feet were too weak to carry them even a short distance. One day Siddhartha fell unconscious, fainted from hunger. And while his friend thought that he was dead, but he recovered. And as soon as he felt strong enough to speak, he said, from now on, brethren, I am going to stop starving and torturing myself. Why? The reason that by torturing myself, I do not learn better. I do not learn anything. So Siddhartha began to eat and drink, and slowly he regained his strength again. The stronger he became, the cleaner his thought became. The teaching that in order men to starve themselves in order to lead the good life, and that way to gain wisdom, must be wrong. He learned from that. So he stopped starving himself from that day. And what happened? Day after day, week after week, and month after month, he wandered through the forests and towns, living on berries and fruit he found, and rice given by him, by the townspeople. Sometimes he became very tired of the way of living. He longed to see his wife and his little boy. Very often, he made up his mind to give up, like as a beggar, and return to the palace. But Siddhartha knew that he would never be happy again in the palace until he learned what he searched for, until he learned how to end suffering for all mankind. So it is like this now. Once he sat under a sort of a fig tree, okay, a sort of a fig tree, here he said, I'll sit here and think of all that I was taught by my teachers. Okay? So when he think over and over again, he realized one thing. He realized the wisdom and truth he was seeking. That the thing he searched for was not something outside of himself, or not some great mystery that was hidden away somewhere in the rainbow's end. He realized that he would not get the wisdom by studying the Vedas, or by starving himself, or by sitting on nails and sharp stones, as some monks did. He now believed that the truth and wisdom he had searched for was within himself, was not from outside. All the wisdom and knowledge a man looks for, he thought, are in his own soul, and that he ought to search for it. Then he made a vow. What vow did he make? Not until I gain this wisdom will I move from under this tree. So for hours and hours, Siddhartha sat under the tree, comparing the teaching of his religion with all his experience in life. And suddenly, what happened? His face lit up with joy. And he exclaimed, at last, I have found the key to wisdom. This is the way of life. What did he found out? From good must come good, and from evil must come evil. Write down that one. That is the first wisdom he had found. From good must come good, and from evil must come evil. Siddhartha wondered why he had never thought of that before. For this is the law of life. It was the important teaching of the Brahmanism in the law of the deep. But now he saw it in a new light. Okay? He saw that particular sentence in a new light. From good must come good, and from evil must come evil. So all night long, Siddhartha sat there thinking. With the first law of life as the key to wisdom, he found he could answer all the questions that had troubled him since he became a monk. So from that very sentence, he thought that he could answer every question that troubled him since he became a monk. So the next morning, Siddhartha realized that he was at the end of his long search for wisdom. Now he was the Buddha, which means the enlightened one. The meaning of Buddha is the enlightened one. E-N-L-I-G-H-T-E-N-E-D, enlightened one. Enlightened one. So the night on which Prince Siddhartha Gautama of the Sakya kingdom became the Buddha, he is called by his follower the sacred night. Buddha sacred night night. And the tree under which he sat during that night became to be known as the Bo tree. The Bo tree means the tree of wisdom. The tree under which he sat, this tree is called the Bo tree. Means the tree of wisdom. And it is thought that the place where this tree stood would be the center of the earth. That is what his followers believe. So this is how Buddha became the enlightened one. So, after he became the enlightened one, what happened? The things he found out is not something very new to the old religion, but he saw that in the new light. Okay, water always flows downhill. Fire is always cold. Fire is always hot. Ice is always cold. Praying to all the gods in India will not make the water flow uphill, or the fire cold, or ice hot. That is because there are laws in life that make these things as they are. So also that which is done cannot be undone. Prayer and sacrifice to the gods must therefore be useless. That is his conclusion. Okay. Prayer to the gods and sacrifice to the gods must be useless. If that is true, said the Buddha again, then all the images representing the many gods are useless. If these gods have no power to change anything in the world, they should not be prayed to and worshipped. If a man does good, the result will be good, and if he does evil, the result will be evil. And all the gods in India cannot change that. That is his conclusion. But I say to you that the Vedas are not sacred book. He even renounced that. And he even said that, I do not believe Brahma created anything. The world was not created by Brahma. Then how was it created? When asked, he said, the world was created by itself. The world always was. It will never come to an end, and anything that has no end has no beginning. That is what it said. And he further said that there are two extremes almost to keep away from one life of pleasure, that is selfish and ignoble, and the other is a life of self-torture, and that too is unworthy. So here, before we go to the details of his teaching, Buddha did not like these two extremes. The first one is that a life of pleasure. Okay, he did not like the life of pleasure. A life of pleasure, because that is selfish and ignoble. And the other side is he did not like, the other extreme he did not like is that the life of self-torture. That is unworthy. That is useless. That is what he taught. So this is how this Buddha, the teaching of Buddha, had been started. Now let's look at the screen once more. So I have though I had told you the story in the lengthy way, these are the short story which I am going to give in the notes. You have to remember this four sides, okay? What are the four sides? A man all skin and bones sitting in pain upon the ground. The second one is an old man saw that his bed was as stark as a dragon bone. A funeral procession followed by the widow and the children weeping bitterly. An old monk dressed in coarse yellow robes, begging for food, but calm and happy. These are the four sides which sense the life of Gautama. And this is the from good must come good and from evil must come evil. This is the first wisdom he had found. And from that, he said, he believed that he could answer every question in religion. So some of Buddha's earlier teaching is that prayer and sacrifice to God must be useless. The Vedas are not sacred books. The world was not created by Brahma. Anything that has no end has no beginning. The world is going to exist forever and ever. And there are two extremes to keep away. One is a life of pleasure. That is selfish and ignoble. The other is a life of self-torture. And that too is unworthy. For these two roads do not lead to the good life. Then that's what we have explained before. And now the question comes. What is the good road one should follow? He answered, follow the middle path. How can one find the middle path? By following the Eightfold Path. And what is the Eightfold Path? The Eightfold Path teaches the 8 rules of life. They are, so this is the main teaching. Okay, if you could read, please read together. Number 1 is right belief, which is the belief that truth is the guide of man. Okay, continue. Number 2.
Right resolve to take on all the dark and nurture all unbelieving nature. Right speech, never to lie, never to slander anyone, and never to use force or harsh language. Right behavior, never to steal, never to kill, and never to do anything that one may regret or be ashamed of. Right occupation, never to choose an occupation that is bad, like fraudery, the handling of stolen goods, right effort, always to strive after the which is good and always to keep away from the which is evil. Right condemnation, always to be calm and not allow one's thought to be mastered by any joy or sorrow. right concentration is then found when all the other rulers may be followed and one has the state of perfect peace.
And also, there are 5 commandments of uprightness. What are they?
Do not kill, do not steal, do not lie, do not commit adultery, do not become intoxicated and lie.
So these are the main doctrines of the Buddha's teaching. What is the road one should follow? Follow the middle path. And how can one follow the middle path? By following this Eightfold Path. Okay? And these are the 5 commandments of uprightness. These are the main teaching extracted from the Buddha's teaching. So he has set all these rules, which is not different even from our religions also. Only a few things are different. And these are the rules of life. B-E-N-E-R-E-S, Benares. The first sermon which Buddha preached is the sermon of Benares. Not the sermon on the mount, it's the sermon of Benares. Okay? And now, before we go to the other details, what happened after Buddha found out all this wisdom which he had sought for? Let me continue a few of the story. Those 5 monks, he had first converted. Those 5 monks, he had influenced, had become his followers. And after that, King Bimbisara, okay, which he had already promised that he'll tell him what he had found. So they went to King Bimbisara and preached his new finding. And the king and his people also became the followers of Buddha. That is how Buddha spread his teaching. And after that, they came back to his land, the land of Sakya. And from there, what happened? His father was still alive there. And he taught his teaching to his family, to his wife, and even to his son. He had converted all his families to the teaching of Buddha, to his teaching. When being asked, how can a woman also become a follower? He answers that, do not the worst of mankind afflict women as well as men? So even women are being affected by the evils of this world. So why should not women also become a follower? Why should not women also become a nuns? Okay, like a monk. So the Buddha's teaching spread throughout his father's kingdom of the Sakyas. Except the Sakyas kingdom also accepted the teaching. When Buddha became very famous, okay, his cousin also joined the Buddha's order. And from that, the teaching of Buddha had been spread to many, many countries also. And one incident took place, okay. Is there no way to bring my son back to life again? When being asked, what is Buddha's answer to her? If you bring me some mustard seed from a house in which neither parent, child, relative, nor servant ever died, I shall bring your child back to life again. If you could bring a mustard seed from the families where there is no death, from the families where their father, mothers, or relatives haven't died, haven't seen death, I'll bring your child back to life. That woman, without thinking, just went to every house and asked, does anyone die from your family? But the answer she got is that in every family there was dead people. So from that she realized that she'll not be able to find anywhere. So he went back to Buddha and said he doesn't find. The Buddha explained to the weeping mother the truth about suffering, and all of life is suffering, and that the way to good life was taught this Eightfold Path. In that way, he had converted people without doing a single miracle. Is that many kings are being converted, are being convinced to his teaching, and through those great renowned kings. And the last famous king who spread Buddhism would be King Asoka. Okay, at the time of King Asoka is very famous. In India, we even use the Asok Chakra as the symbol. So during the time of Asoka had sent out missionaries of Buddha to various countries of the world, and from that time onwards, this Buddhism had spread to many parts of the world as well. So here, now I want to give some comparison. This Buddhas and Christianity. Conquering the 5 pollutions that affect the human race. The power of beauty, sound, odor, taste, and touch. When a person are not being attracted by beauty, sound, odor, odor, taste, touch. Mong thì nó đi nè, đây mẹ gọi nè tây giang, ai kêu là tiêu dừng gọi tây giang, ai kim nằm tùy tây giang, ai lim tây giang, ai kêu là ai gọi nuông, hốt cho bằng tây à cả, mi kèm gió ôm lộ chơi cái nè, mong pi chỉnh thì phải này, chỉ tiểu đây. Bây giờ cái này cái discipline hạ bol mà vào Buddhism nè, mong coi à lúc cọ mò, coi cho bằng hị thiện là đi cái nè, discipline tam tắc áo mà, tôi nè, tôi lại cái khó cái nè, ngoài film như tôi tụ quay bằng à, Shaolin mong, ít chỉ để không mà Shaolin, ít chỉ để không khác, cái Buddha's teaching apan mà, cái tắc sao cái thứ số mà te hiu à, amau te kha, cái Buddha's temple. Cái veng bit tu ding kem bit tu ding physical training le la hiwa cái Buddha's teaching na kha taksa soi joi na taksa thuzo dim na ho ko chawang kha na ka kena again wa ma wa he ti the ding ha ko chi tan dong mi ke thuzo chiang kha monk ki thei pa na hiu chi ka ko jaga to Shaolin monk ki chi te khong kha cái thứ độ mà amau hạt mà amau mà của mình azọ lộ invincible to các ngày tuổi hiền của mình azọ lộ hạt nà xiêm nà là mà lên ai hang hạt nun nem mà cam sung khut guang lên cây lầu đỉnh khó pa nun nem thế hi về mà ai hang có chỉ to cái thứ độ mình thế hiểu chỉ cả cái Buddha's teaching cái thuốc lúc đam chỉ cả công nghiệp nào hia các bạn à Buddha teaching cái chỉ cả vast lot liền lót cái lại chăng interpretation pen tam pia interpret thế hiểu chân thế hi na kha cái Buddha's teaching tung to thế na hiểu tam pi amau laka ki pol khen na tampi sex tampi kha subsex tampi kha apian kheno na koina country tuam dung suina Myanmar gamitale aikele Indonesia gamitale Thailand tina koi gamitale America Australia Europe gam tam kha ka tichebang kha Buddha's teaching tampi oma to India apian kha Himalaya India kha Buddhism ki kha api ching bak ke ya Nepal kha om dinga pai bana yai Burma ekina bi pen Burma pen go e sim tam khomi te e sim tam kwa tan pha khonga Buddha dim khong lian pi pi om de mo pe chi kha om dinga ai kele falama bang le e mi te khoi hanga ka Buddha's temple chi ham hochi bang te kha khoteng khia la ka om zo ai Burma bang khat hochi to ka kha ya Buddhism ki chi kha le tung pum pi ki the da lai London Buddhist Society ki chi bang kha 1907 lama ane ke pan kheta ma London Buddhist Society ki chi bang ai kele Hawaii ki chi kha United States state khat United State state khat ong hi ina 1959 ina tens of thousands of Buddhists became American citizen hoje America le kha Buddhist kha ma hi ka na ban tang ko dinga Pabana Buddhist na University lian pi bang le anewa a Western Buddhist University was opened at Boulder, Colorado. America gamabang University lian pi anewa the Buddhist Church of America kichi kong bang oma Buddhist Church of America amao tena they openly criticize and oppose the gospel of Christ. Hey Christian sakwa topikalina nata gen oppose bolwa hoibana tu lai min thangma ma kha New Age movement kichi ka kai Buddha teaching a kipani na hongpian khia hia kai Buddha's teaching a kha a background kha den na a story kongsut pinilo na kha bang jekhya me che le hong ki patdan te de na a story again te pen na long semana cham te dio kuchbang hong piang khia na na chu kya lamma pi bol hi ve wa chi ka na lem sumom din te king ta mi bang jaka tampi convincing hiam me changa a story changa jile ta tai san jena kum tampi pai thudik thutak azon na ha amu so pen bang ha chi changina kya khilzon pen mundang apan polama apan mu di lo ina ema sungma ki ngai to ameng ho meditation tung to na ki ngai to tung to na kha it khovel ki teng thei so dinga he kwa ma ki loading leitung abang ma en la loading ho ema tung to na ki panina nok sak na ke chi ki pa na ke chi kha mu so the hi chi kha amao teaching koi ta na kha hong ge nei na wa kha tu lai khovela mi tam pi te to lai te la ka ki ngai sia depression hung kong ai kele khat le khat self esteem chi ha mai kele ele ei ki mon ngam na ni na ding ina he Buddha teaching pen khovele na hoi salwai changa to internet khonga Buddha's thought wisdom of Buddha ke chi khong kha leitung pumpia amin thang pen ichi me dinga mi lung sim la zo pen um suak ta mo ai chu huti jaga kha Christian te tam pia de he teaching jana eight teachings of Eightfold Path ki chi khong kha Christian te sin sak na to akika lem tuan lo ai chu mo akika om tuan lo he Christian sin sak na ke pan sin sak na ke la kya chi ki the chu adang hoi ten kha akika na lem tuan lo chu khovela dina hele tunga adin na na chu he Buddha teaching pen kha he sian na om hi ba chi thei lo tam pi om hi Christian sa ko to le akika lo tam pi om hi he Buddha teaching kha hoi je kami tam pi te Buddha akipani na Buddhism akipani na Christianity a convert mi tam pi om mo ka he ai le hoi pen kha ai le tu na ngalas ndi na Christian teaching pen kha bang jaka tung nung zo hiam chi kha yan dinga he cham pe ding khat tung pe lai dinga akipat na kha den ni gen ta 6th century BC mo Yesu Christian ma 6th century BC akipat ni ta che gen ta 300 400 AD lama kha Buddha teaching tamzo ka ong ki gel ahi na kha chel sud mi ten again nawa kha he Buddha teaching kha bang jaka Christian sa wai ke the Bible teaching to tampi ki bang hiam chi le a Buddha sa ko ki chi temple Jesus Christ ma thama na ki pa ai hanga hoi Tripitaka ki chi asa kholai bute ko kha ye chagina written form hangom tak tak kha Christianity ki chi kha leitunga hong teaching nunga hong ki the dak nunga he Buddha's teaching Buddha lai bu tam zo te kha hong ki get panahi na kha then a story again te khong bang le Jesus Christ tam thu to ki bang tama tam se mai je male by 7 holy men from the Himalayan chi khong hong pai wele ku chadam khong a ki gen tam pi te le teaching tam pi te kha a khonung tham thama hong ki get a hi na kha the Christian sa ko influence na tung to na kha ki get hi bia gin ta tam pi oma he ki le thei dinga I like to major teaching te la kan Christianity to akibat la una te kha ki chin ending a khat na number 1 what is the basis of knowledge of Buddha ma Buddha ki chi kha I thei na kha banga Buddha ki chi khali tung anom tak tak ma cho hi dinga ho Buddha lived in about 560 to 480 BC ki chi he kanok tak pena 560 to 480 BC kala leitung anom tak tak he but no eyewitnesses or contemporary record anything of his life and teaching Buddha ki chi kha om hilele eyewitness ko ma om lo mo eyewitness di Buddha contemporary hun lai na hi chabang mi khat ano me chi thei ding ko ma om lo eyewitness om lo ai or contemporary or recorded anything of his life and his teaching Parbana the three baskets were written 500-600 years later ama pian nung kumjanga jagok nunga kigel ahi na kha and are filled with myth and legend myth mythology legend the earliest manuscript copy of this record dates to about AD 900 no so Buddha's teaching 900 aki model te 900 AD akigel te ho ha ki model ai jesu pian nung mo 900 AD to kigel panai ale Buddha ki chi leitung om tak tak hi ai hangina leitung om tak tak hi chi proof thina dile a contemporary yom lo chu and what about Christ mo ai le tuna a Christian te na ito pa Jesus Christ pendol bangale what is the best of our knowledge of Christ Jesus Christ lived in the 1st century AD mo his life and teaching were recorded by eyewitnesses and counter contemporaries in the New Testament John the last writer died at the end of the 1st century. And we have many manuscripts of John dating to AD 120. Jesus Christ bel leitung om tak tak hi chi contemporary mo eyewitness Matthew, Mark, Luke, John tena na gel mo le. Parbana Theophilus ki bang. I hun la Roman Rom kumpite chiding ai kel kausar gafta sun lahi bang ke che mo. Ai kel Herod hun lahi bang ke che Hoja ka Jesus Christ pendel leitung om tak tak hi che proof nan dikha ama hun la contemporary sa ming te pen record tam pio mai chu Jewish historian ten an record khao chu hoja ka Jesus Christ pen to ti bol lo ai he Buddha ki chi leitung anom tak tak le approve di ma eyewitness ko ma om lo ai number 2 what is the nature and origin of its man Buddha ki patna pen kha pachana ke pan ke ya mo ama alama ki gen isu then a story again ta Buddha never claimed to be anything but a man and taught all men can be fully enlightened as himself Buddha na teaching om sum kha ama bang banga meeting kha salwa kom ding enlightened hiding chi kha de ile lai chu aman pathian thul pathian lam le gen khalo mo he did not teach men to worship him as deity anungji te nama maya kunu chi meditation din akunu chi hilalem chen aman ka hon biam le chilawai ama ka tu ni tane na thonom ke ha le Jesus Christ pendel le tunga min inang pianga puchbang ama le pathian hi no pathian mi hong so ka hi pathian ke panung panahi dan ama le ma chiang ta ke na ki ge na hi pathian hi na pen kha chiang ta ken oma Buddha ki chi pendel ama le ma le ki claim lo hi ma hi athum na a mission no kabangale what is the mission and great accomplishment of its men no Buddha mission pen kha to search for and find light Buddha's a mission sun kha wai va pen zong khedi to search for and find light in order to save himself from suffering hele tung gim thok na ke pa dina so tak na di zong la le sum aka ai ba na amana hi thesum kha midang ten le hi che bang na zong leo chen ki pa na mun din hiu chi khai chu ama thiu tup sang pen mission sang pen ka ai hangina Jesus Christ pen why azona true light pen ka Jesus Christ ai zo a the origin of all light here he is the light of the world here mo ama ka why Buddha azong pen ka Jesus Christ ana hizo ai mo he came to suffer and die not to save himself but to save others from eternal punishment why tang ton so tak na ka Jesus Christ na kon hilai Buddha ina ama so tak na di akizona midang so tak da kon hil theilela ile bang che banga chi kha no practical example hiam bang ma kon pe thei ki hi sabana Buddha's teaching him hali tunga de hoi laptel Buddha teaching zuileng bel khavel nuam ma ding ai hanga khavel khan tok na bang na chi tele ton ke dinga development ke dinga bana afterlife him ka lamin na lo he Buddha's teaching at late heading abana what is the authority behind its main teaching Buddha teaching penin bang tana thunei na nei hiam it is saying na Buddha decided that he was his own authority he was his own authority and that its main must be his own authority Buddha na teaching pen well ko ma thunai loading nang ma khalian pen hi ne he no BLM to yourself nang ma khalem na hi nang hoi na sak chu na hi ding hi me hi chi khat ama thopia hi the light of truth is a subjective experience and cannot be taught or understood in words kia de hoi pen nga de hoi khol lo the nga de hoi pen hi lo the hoi ja nang ma kha na ki zon so de hi chi khat Buddha teaching pai da na hi therefore he offered no miracles to certify his teaching miracles bang ma pa khana ki pan hi na miracles bang ma bol kya no verification of experience verification na mo pakyan ta hi na pakyana pa na hi na te bang ma verify na di bang mam te kya and no claim that his light came from God athumu te pe le pakyana ki pan chi bang ma claim abo ke hi ai hangin na Jesus Christ pen pakyana hi chi agena ama kha koi khovel ba ka hi dana ki gena pakyana ki pan hong pai hi dana gena koi proof na ding ina license ha pum pi Genesis a ki pan Jesus Christ pen pakyan ta pai na proof hi na kha Oma pai bana thukun ta ka leitung online na miracle stamp pi hi tu chi na te khei bo lo hi pathiam na la chi le nom dinga abana last point na what did it mean teach atu sin sa bu kha bang hian chi chagina Buddha in pen bel pathian lam kha khoi kha bet lo mo God is unknown pathian pen thei but lo hi mi nga dia thei zo bo lo hi pathian om chi bel ging tai so Buddha in ai hang pathian pen thei zo unknown and unknowable there may be gods or a god but deity did not create the universe chi mo ai chuman ka peja ka science na khavel pum pi na pom thei na pen kha lelewan pen pathian bo hi lo hi chi kaman ge nei chu but deity did not create the universe it is eternal always evolving in cycle independently of deity pathian om bel ging tai hanga lelewan pen pathian bol da na man gen lo mok no lai sing thon bel pathian bol na chang thakina every question can be answered in the Bible. Man has no soul and should not desire to always exist as an individual person. And should not desire to always exist. Hinduism, his life essence is reincarnated many times until it lost its illusion. Incarnation pen gintabe venchen. Min pen thil hoi na hoi isep le anon cha hoi apiam ding mo hoi na pen kha atopa Hindu tegin ta dana hoi to den len kha to pa pathian na om di e Christian tegin ta na pen bel I personal identity pen leitung I pen thak na kha eternal na la kha I personal identity pen mang no lo ding ki che hi le Buddha ina kwai hi lo ina I personal existence pen aman di pen kha ama lamet na hi me hi personal existence men manga pathian bang om pen khoi kha atela men nak sang pen hi me pabana life to ke say life in a single essence in all form thought separate from the material universe all life is impermanent evolving man's life ting kha permanent hi lo hi se kha gena impermanent hi na kha hu chi kon ko ma kha Buddha's ina teaching na kha man should not kill animals or insect for any reason. Chỉ thép chụp giờ mà. Khi nó này biểu mà các bạn dạo tá cái chung, ai cả các phát hiện đa na, anh ấy tuổi phát hiện, cái pan đa na, anh ấy tuổi giờ cả. chỉ hi nó na ilai sin thon bel mi hing te pen kha ne adang te pen bel nek ding a pathian han piam o dang te pen nek hi dan ham ge na ai men's duty to ke sai na Buddha's teaching na man's duty is to fulfill the karma. Karma is to law of life. Like fulfill the eternal law that assigns him to pay in this life for the gifts of his life essence in the previous incarnations. Buddha's teaching is that there is no such thing as forgiveness of such deeds. His ultimate duty is to quit desiring anything, to be detached from all things. Buddha's teaching Leitung haksan again tinating tengka. Till desire na siya from desire. All sufferings come from desire. Why desire mi nga de na himim ka de na ting ka mi nga isuk bay take siya nga ka. Why ka noksak na pa na hi. Timo hoy chuk. Hoy siya kaya beauty, sound, odor, taste, touch. Huchi bang tiya de na desire kichipen ka mi nga ibay sak take siya nga. Perfect happiness kichi ka omahi. Chỉ một ta này, mà cái teaching khác. Solomon Tugen, all vanity, chị thiếu tiền bằng malo hay chị. And again, bậc cái này mà lấy tung thiếu tiền khác, bằng mà en lạ lo à. Hốt cho mà lấy tung bằng mà kia nè này lo à. Làm em na bằng mà ông lo hốt cho bậc ông chơi nè, kia pa na bốc kia mà mày. Kia pa lo na, thế không có thiếu bao nhiêu làm em na sang lo, phải tan itun lo chơi na khác. Lum kim lo na ma hi chila ma man khagen mo ama wisdom tampi te hutse bang na gena hoja ka hi chebang desire te him kha su be the changa kha ho su be changa kha happiness o ma hi chika again pi pe na hi hoja ka salvation to ke saya kha khaddam na to ke saya kha Buddha's teaching kha bang yam chi le salvation means the acceptance of no self achi omdan chu ke chi omlo wa mo cái chỉ ông lâu à, ấy mà hi na tình tình chỉ mang hi lại ông thị trang ngoài bền khác, hoạt động này chỉ mấy đàn ama game đàn khác. A Christian sin sắc na bền đâu, salvation means forgiveness of our sins. Through the blood of Christ ina systematic takina Christian sắc coi na hoạt động na to cái sợi khác, game ama everything has a purpose, mà thiếu tình khác purpose ông hi đàn. Để cái lại sinh thọ không chịu tàu đi hi à hay Buddha chính sắc na hiam Hindu chính sắc na thế à khi chỉ bằng abang mà explain thế hiểu không asa có lại bu tiêu le om về phải về từ tam pi thu gen tiêu phải về tam pim le amao ten thì explain thế lâu tam pi om hi systematic taka again thế lâu om hi à bây giờ cái nào cái thế conclude cho bằng hiam mình sẽ lấy Here's Sakodan, Hinduism, it may be Buddhism, or whatever religion it may be in the coming days. Again, detail ha. Hút sa bang teto, he Christian Sakwa pen ha. Comparison ni bolto ni lok dim wa. Hoy te tung to na ha. He Christian Sakwa pen. Sakodang to te bo lo hai. Chi nong te chian wa. First period ay lak bak mana sakateng tengka sakwa kata ki panong piang kaya chi pen ka. A Christianity sakwa ke chi ka. The biblical religion pen ka. Sakateng teng ki pat na. Adik pen hi chi ka. Ki thei so na ding na religion subject pen. Aban la to jel de he.